Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns mandatory minicamp underway in Berea. Day one today. It will continue tomorrow and wrap up on Thursday. Some news out of Berea, not great. Amari Cooper, not at mandatory minicamp. Cooper entering the final year of his contract, making right around $20 million, a little over $20 million a year. And that wide receiver market has exploded. It is an unexcused absence from mandatory minicamp. Kevin Stefanski was asked about the Cooper situation today.
Obviously, as you guys know, you really have to focus on the guys that are here. These situations, I understand that they do come up. I'll really leave all of that between Amari and Amari's agent, AB, and those type of conversations. But again, as you guys know, we focus on guys that are here. We'll get some good work in and really keep it at that.
In a case confirm that he's asked for a contract extension?
I can't confirm that.
In a case like this, does he or his agent inform the Browns? I won't be there.
There's been a dialogue, so.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, we're a little concerned about that, given just the way the wide receiver market has blown up. So now it'll be interesting to see how they resolve this.
Yeah. And if this wasn't Amari Cooper, I'd probably be more worried. This is business. He's entering the final year of his deal. He's due 23.8, which sounds exorbitant, but you look around the rest of the league, like he's not even in the upper tier, and his play would dictate that he should be. You got to understand this is a player coming in. This is probably his last bite at the apple. He turns 30 next Monday, so he's trying to get himself set up, hopefully at least another year, maybe two onto this contract. And it's just going to be ever evolving, like you got to think of what he's been nothing but productive since he's got here. He's been the best receiver as far as production in the AFC North since he's got here in 2022. 72 balls caught last year, 1,250 yards, a career high 17.4 yards per reception. Like if he's going to negotiate, now's the time to do it. And we're in the middle of June. If this was July in training camp and this isn't resolved, then I'll start to be a little more concerned.
Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on ESPN Cleveland talking about his read of the situation with Cooper.
The big news is Amari Cooper unexpectedly not in Berea today, faces fines. What do you read into that, T?
Cooper's in the last year of his deal, making $20 million from the contract the Browns inherited from Dallas. We know that number one wide receiver salaries have skyrocketed this year in the last 2 years. I do believe the Browns want to extend his deal short term, but evidently it's not been done yet. I think probably he wants more years than they're willing to give him. He'll be 30 this year. And while I think he's still at the top of his game, you don't want to invest too far into the future for a receiver over the age of 30.
And that's probably an accurate read. And that's kind of that's where the negotiation is going, He probably wants 3-4 years. The Browns probably want 2-3 years. It's something along those lines.
Yeah, and you can understand where he's coming from as a player, but at the end of the day, the organization has to think long term. They got to think about the contracts they already have on the books, who's coming up after that, and you could see this is where it's headed. AB and Stefanski signed their extension. Now you turn your focus. Getting Cooper is a priority. Getting him settled, and 23.8 this year. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to extend him, lessen that cap hit this year, throw the void years on the back end like they've done with every other contract. This is just standard practice. What I think will be the most telling thing, though, is you hear he's subject to fines, but that is up to the team. If the team decides not to fine him, you would understand this could be more amicable than we're led to believe. It's just something working out between the agents and AB. So if he does get fined, that's a little more hard line in the sand type stuff. But if not, this is probably just a soft negotiating tactic.
And the 23 is, relative to the renegotiations and the signing bonuses. And so it was initially a 5-year, $100 million deal, $20 million a year. And it was signed with the Cowboys. It wasn't one of the Browns type contracts. So that's the other thing. So some other news out in Berea, the new wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy, inside during today's minicamp with a minor injury, so he was unable to go in the team portion of drills. Again, it's June. That's one of the reasons they're not pushing any of those guys that are nicked up or banged up whatsoever.
Yeah, this one was a little more puzzling to me because he didn't come outside. He stayed inside. So you have to wonder, is it just an ice and stem situation? Because there were plenty of guys who weren't practicing who were outside on the bikes being, with around their teammates. You got to think someone coming in brand new to the team, you want to ingratiate yourself with your teammates, just kind of being there, being seen as Nick Chubb was, who wasn't practicing, but he's out there with the guys. They didn't see Judy today. He stayed inside. So kind of puzzling what that injury could be, and why not have him come out and just get on an exercise bike, or is it something so minor that they're working on other things? It's hard to tell at this point.
A sign of progress and some good news out in Berea. Deshaun Watson throwing in 7-on-7s. Didn't do that during the OTAs, but was involved in 7-on-7 participation as far as throwing, taking snaps, physical snaps, throwing the football in 7-on-7. So it's a step forward, something he was unable to do last week and the week before in OTAs, able to do it in mandatory minicamp. Did not throw in 11-on-11s. But wasn't expected to as well. Watson talked about kind of how he's feeling and where he's at with his rehab.
It was great. I mean, it's truly a blessing. Came a long way from, something that was a big scare last year, something I never dealt with, and something that, most football players don't, especially as a quarterback, don't get to, they don't get to go through that type of surgery. But, for me to be where I'm at today, is definitely a blessing. More glory to that. And it was fun to be able to get out there and compete. Game one is not till another 2.5, 90-something days. So, I'm in a very comfortable spot. And like I said before, just taking it one day at a time and just keep going from there.
And again, it's being dictated by his surgeon and the medical people. That's his progress is dictated medically.
As it should be. You have a large investment in this player coming back from something that isn't common for quarterbacks to get. You're going to see baby steps. Today was just another step in that. 7-on-7s, he looked good. There was no ill effects, and they're going to, tomorrow he won't do anything. Thursday you'll see if they ramp up anymore, if they just keep that the baseline for this mandatory minicamp. So it's all about progress, though, and mentally just getting back to where you need to be. So that when the bullets are flying, you're 100% go. They're not going to risk it. They're not going to try to ramp things up any faster than they need to be. This is the middle of June. There's no need to worry about what he's participating in, what he isn't. It's just when he does come out there, does he look comfortable? Does he look good? Are the biomechanics smooth? Is the ball coming out the way it's supposed to? And you're seeing that, So this is just another step. There's going to be many, many more. So every time that we see him, we're going to have to talk about it. Is he doing what he's supposed to be doing? Is his progress dictating that he's going to be ready to go for week one? And, obviously we won't know those steps until we get to August. But as of right now, I think that you should be happy where he's at, and then just kind of hold your breath that we don't have any ill news the day after he throws. That, for me, that's all it comes down to. Does his rest and recovery dictating that he's able to maintain that every other day schedule?
Yeah, and so they don't expect him to throw in 11-on-11s here. So day off tomorrow, 7-on-7s again on Thursday, and kind of continue to progress, working towards potentially doing team drills when training camp hits in July. Another new face that we get to see with the entire squad is running back coach Deuce Staley, putting his running backs through the paces. Hines out there as well, Naheem Hines and Foreman. So Deuce Staley, vocal guy, intense, a little bit different style from Stump Mitchell, but still all good, is working his running backs through the drills and through the paces. Had an additional hand helping him out as well as Nick Chubb. Not in pads, but out on the field in his jersey. So Nick Chubb appearing out on the field, and that, again, a really good sign. He's able to be walking, and he's been running straight line again, kind of getting involved, just wanting to be there with his running backs, being Nick Chubb.
It's got to feel good for him just to be back on that field. You know, the way we saw it happen, go down in Pittsburgh, the cart and everything, just to be out there with his teammates, it's got to feel good. And I'm pumped to have Deuce Staley as the coach. He brings a ton of energy. I got used to it when I was watching Hard Knocks. He's someone who brings the juice day in and day out. It'll be a good burst of energy. And if you look at this coaching staff and the different type of personalities you have on both sides of the ball, you know, there really wasn't someone fiery on offense. Now they got that guy. You know, it's going to make team drills that much more fun for the players when they have a guy on their side who's throwing grenades back at the defense, just the way that Jim Schwartz will. So yeah, I'm glad the Deuce is there, and I expect a lot of this running back room even before Nick Chubb suits up, just because I think they're going to surprise some people. I think they have some good players that have good skill sets in different areas that when you combine them all together, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised what you see in that backfield.
So we've talked about the perception from some of the national media that Watson is no longer a high-level starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. Watson addressed those perceptions on his QB Unplugged podcast with his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery.
I don't live for other people's expectations, so I really care less about what anybody else got to say. Like, none of that shit really matter to me. You feel me? And like, even if I, got love for you, respect, it's like respectfully, but disrespectfully, it's like I give two fucks about what you think. I got my own expectations. I know my expectations. My expectations is to be a world champion one day, and that's what I want to do. So, I got to surround myself with people that been there before or came close to doing it, and I got to find my way to get there. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm prepared to get there. And with God's timing and, a little bit of, just fate, just kind of, things working out in my favor. Last year was an injury. I can't control that. You know what I'm saying? It's only so much. I got hit, and I landed on my shoulder wrong and my shoulder came apart. I can't control that. At the end of the day, it's football. So, but, I don't really pay too much mind of what they got to say, what they do. And yeah, that's pretty much what I got to say about it.
Translation, he's pretty motivated to prove those people wrong.
Yeah. He's saying all the right things, but he has ears. He knows what people are saying. He knows the discourse, and it's going to be the discourse when you're the team's highest paid player and you're also the biggest question mark. And that difference is a ton of discourse. So people are going to keep talking. He's going to have to put the blinders on, go out there and prove those people wrong if he wants to silence the critics. If not, that's only going to get louder and louder.
Casey Kinnamon and I from Dawg Pound Daily, Barking Browns podcast, can step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, this is Danielle again, just commenting again about Watson's injury, always getting hurt. The only reason I said that is because he played at the softball game and he ran into that guy. So I was just saying he's being bubble wrapped because, it's always weird stuff happening to him, unfortunately. I really, really want him to play well. I do really wish Watson well. It's just he has to stop also when he does play, trying to be defensive and make tackles. So I guess I'm just trying to say I hope he plays smarter, and I do wish him well, and I don't wish him anything bad. All right, go Brownies. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I get we were kind of I get fans, getting a scare there. It's a guy that hadn't he's been pretty healthy, relative to the position he plays prior to his time with the Browns.
Yeah, and it's just what it feels like. It feels like this snake-bitten bad luck since he's just inability to be on the field through suspension or injury. But there's a lot that goes into it playing quarterback. It's a tough ask because you want to portray yourself as if you're just one of 53 and you would do whatever else is expected of any of the other 53, whether that's fight for a first down or push the pile. But the reality of the situation is you're not one of the 53. You are the one of the 53, and sometimes you're more important. You have to pick and choose your spots. So I think it's a rough thing for a playmaking quarterback like him to toe that line and know when to temper it down.
Yeah, and he was asked about that. So Deshaun Watson was asked today if Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff have talked to him about the need to avoid taking big hits.
Nah, I mean, I didn't take any big hits. I mean, I ran up with the guy in Tennessee, popped back up, finished the game. So I don't think the hit or situation is a problem. Of course, I want to, sustain and play for longevity, but, we just got to play football. I can't play hesitant. I got to do what I got to do, and I got to understand that, the hits I do take up do add up. So, got to be smart about it.
And that's the balancing act for a guy like Watson. He can't play timid because that's not what got him there.
Yeah, and you see like pocket quarterbacks like Peyton Manning who would not only just take the sack, he would initiate it and go down without getting hit, not worrying about what people questioned his toughness because he understood that he was more important than that. But for playmakers like Watson, or we saw with Cam Newton, or even Josh Allen, sometimes that thing they have in them to keep the play alive, to make something happen, so it'll put you in harm's way, and I understand, like, it's football, you're going to take hits, but if you think back to that Tennessee hit he referenced earlier, he initiated that. Like, that's what you got to cut out. You can't be initiating the hits. Some things are going to happen. They're going to be out of your control, whether you fall awkwardly on something or someone hits you when you're already kind of caught up, and that's going to come in the flow of a football game. But he has to be smart with his body to the degree that it doesn't hurt the team. So there's going to be moments where it's called upon him to keep the play going, to dive for that first down, to know when to slide. So it's a crazy balancing act, and the game's so fast, man. It's split-second instances, and you have to make these decisions. But he has to understand what he means to this team and their success long-term, and he can't do anything if he can't get on the field.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting, him saying he has to understand that it's a cumulative effect as well. So that's, again, I think as you get a little older and having played in the NFL and taken some of those, you start to understand what you need to do to stay healthy.
Yeah, that overexposure, it's Father Time's undefeated, and if you just go out there and just keep pressing your luck, someone's going to answer that door for you. These linebackers, these defensive tackles nowadays, everyone on that field is so fast. You can't underestimate anyone. And if you're a playmaking quarterback, you've been that your entire life, but at some point, even if you just slow down a split second, sometimes that's enough for you to get caught. And you have to realize when to live for another day.
So this one's from CBS Sports HQ, Leger Duzable. His thought on the Browns in 2024 and how they stack up in the AFC North.
I got the Cleveland Browns winning this division, guys.
Wow.
Yeah, when you look at this is a championship-type defense, and you know this, Pete. You just stated it. 5 different quarterbacks, Amanda, and they went to the playoffs last year. Deshaun Watson, that is the big question. Will he return to form for what he was doing with the Houston Texans? We saw glimpses of it. Let's not forget, Pete, the game he got hurt versus the Baltimore Ravens, he was flawless that second half with a messed up shoulder. And he actually wanted to fight through this. And probably because of the pressure of getting that $230 million guaranteed, he wanted to go out there, but the doctor said there's no way you could play with this shoulder injury. You would think he'd be a lot healthier. They added Jerry Jeudy to this offense as well. They literally have all the pieces needed. It's on Deshaun Watson. I think he takes that step, and the Cleveland Browns win this division.
So just to clarify for everybody watching, you have the Ravens, who are a Super Bowl favorite.
Yep.
You have Lamar Jackson, everything they did. And you have, Pete, the Bengals winning the division.
And he has the Browns.
And you have the Browns.
Too much overturn on the Ravens team. I think they'll be really good. I just don't think they win the division.
Okay.
And I'm all in on Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow, when he's at his best,
I love Joe Shiesty. I just think he hasn't been healthy, and they're dealing with some issues.
And you have him out for the second half of the season.
I'm not putting that bad juju on Joe Shiesty. I love Joe Shiesty. I just think the Bengals are going to struggle this year.
Casey, it's kind of interesting. Joe Burrow's been hurt. Hadn't finished 2 of the 4 years he's been in the NFL. Nobody talks about how he's injury prone. They talk about how bad his offensive line is.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel with Burrow, even if he had a better offensive line, he holds onto the ball too often as well. So that's just going to leave him exposed for hits. But like when it comes down to the projection of the AFC North, all three of those people had different teams for a reason. They're all worthy. They're all playoff contending teams, but it's just how you view the quarterback position for those teams. You know, if you're looking at the Browns as a whole and you're like, oh, I like their roster, but I feel the Watson's going to hold them back. I can't argue with the take,
Right.
You may be right. It just depends on how you view Watson. If you view Watson as someone who can give you above average quarterback play with pockets of elite, there's no reason the Browns can't go 11-6, 12-5. Same thing could be said for the Bengals. If you believe in Joe Burrow's ability to stay healthy, they could very well be 11-6 or 12-5. It's just this division there's no margin for error. Everything is razor thin, and the competitive balance in the AFC North as a whole is as high as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, and there's a reason that 3 of the 4 teams have the 3 toughest schedules. It's because they got to play each other 6 times.
Yep. Yeah, they could have softball schedules outside that, and it's still going to be tough. So the AFC North, it's the blood and guts division of the NFL, and you're starting to see it though. You're starting to see other people recognize it. I know C.J. Stroud and Micah Parsons were on a podcast, and C.J. Stroud laid it out for him. It's the toughest division in football, and I don't know if you could slice it any other way at this point.
Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. And now I can step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi. Great show as always. This is Daniel, a Mennonite living in Florida. My comment is a follow-up to my call about Jed Wills. Your reply was that he was average. Is just not true according to statistics. He's rated 71st worst at run blocking, 58th worst in pass blocking. I just can't consider these numbers as average. But the worst part is his quitting on plays way too often. Review some of his films and see if I'm not being true. Hustle is something every player can do each play, regardless of his specific abilities. Worse yet, his numbers have steadily declined since he achieved a rating of 28 in 2020. Add to the fact that he's getting $14 million a year. Well, that just doesn't sound prudent compared to the stats. I could be totally wrong, but that's just how I see it. What do you think? Go Browns, stay healthy. Woof, woof.
As always, I appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, Jed Wills is it is a tricky one. Again, if you want to argue that he isn't, I can't defend what the way he has played. Now, I will say, offensive line stats, particularly the PFF ones, that's dicey because PFF doesn't know exactly what they're being coached, they don't know the exact assignments, and a lot of the NFL players have come out swinging against those grades.
Yeah.
Having said that, what I would say is I think the Browns view him as an average tackle, an average left tackle. The $14 million is kind of right in the middle of what a starting left tackle makes. If the quitting on plays, there are some, and you can go back and look at them. That's got to stop. I got nothing for that. I think it gets magnified in the social media age. Again, I think he's been banged up, and he's tried to play through it, and he just is not good at that. That's something that can be a criticism of him.
Yeah, and to the caller's point, his rookie year was his high water mark so far, which is trending in the wrong direction. But before he got hurt this last time, he was starting to play his best football. So we haven't really been able to see it due to the injuries, but it is indefensible, quitting on plays. He plays to his own internal clock, and in this league, especially when you have a quarterback who tries to keep plays alive, you got to go through the echo of the whistle. It's not enough to just do what you consider your assignment and call it a day. Get your head on a swivel, find work. That's what the best offensive linemen in the game do. And then you just look down the line. You don't have to look too far. Look over at Joel. Joel's finding work. White Teller excels at finding work when his assignment's already finished. So it is the effort. And you got to remember when Wills got here, it was like an Iron Man type offensive line. Treader couldn't even practice, and he'd never quit on a play. He was out there gutting it out every week. So he probably felt a certain pressure to drag himself out there hurt. But you're not if you're not good at those situations, you're not doing your team any favors by playing hurt. So he has to put up a stellar year to prove that he's worth the contract he's being paid. I do believe him to be an average left tackle, but when you draft someone 10 overall, that's simply not good enough.
Yeah, and I think the Browns view him as the Browns who see him day in and day out, they know what they're asking him to do. They clearly view him to be serviceable because you wouldn't have picked up the fifth-year option if you thought he was a disaster. So that's kind of where I'm going as far as an average left tackle goes. But again, there are certain things, the caller's absolutely right. There are certain things that kind of make you go, man, you got to stop that, big guy.
Yeah, and you got a new offensive line coach, Andy Dickerson, coming in. He's going to be reevaluated by someone that didn't draft him, that isn't as partial. And if you can see a demotion if he isn't living up to standards with Andy Dickerson. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes, how it unfolds. Because the effort is the one thing he can't control. He's got the prerequisite athleticism to be a very good left tackle, but it just hasn't been there consistently. And that's what they need to see is they need to see consistency out of him because there's been high marks and low marks. At some point you got to level out and show us who you are on a down-to-down basis. And a lot of that comes down to effort, in my opinion.
Deshaun Watson today talked about the offense being built around his skill set.
Some familiarity to what I did in Houston a little bit, but I think just being able to, toss the rock around the field and having guys in different positions is definitely something fun. And, it's definitely the way he's coaching it and teaching it. He's allowing us to be ourselves and go out there and play free.
And again, you kind of got to like hearing that mindset and that reaction to Ken Dorsey from your starting quarterback.
I do, but I wonder, where was this at day one? When you trade for this guy, how come that wasn't the plan from Jump Street? Was to bring over the concepts that he's in love with and find ways to integrate him into your already existing offense. There had to be a way to accomplish that for some reason, because they all talked like that's what was the plan the whole time, and it just never came to fruition. So now that you've scrapped all your offensive assistant coaches, brought in a whole new unit to assemble this new offense to get the best out of Deshaun Watson. This is like the Alamo. This is the last ditch effort to get everything surrounding this guy the way that they need it to be and get the product on the field to look the way that they want it to look. And there's a lot of moving parts, especially with him coming off the injury, because you're not going to be able to see it right out of the gate. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing evolves. But in my opinion, this should have been like the modus operandi from day one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think what happened is you looked at it and you said, boy, we have Nick Chubb. We have one of the all-time great running backs. Let's try to marry a little bit of what we do well with Nick Chubb to Deshaun Watson, and it worked to varying levels, but now it's time to see Deshaun Watson kind of take off.
Yeah, and I get it, man. You're not going to find a bigger Nick Chubb fan than me, and he needs to be a feature part of the offense when he's healthy. And maybe we would have seen this evolve last year had they both been able to be on the field healthy. It just never happened that way. But now that you know what you have invested in Watson, and you kind of seen how things played out in other areas like Denver when things didn't take off the way they needed to, there is a precedent in place here. So they're going to surround him with everything he needs to be successful. But if 2024 isn't it, I don't know what 2025 looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. All right, before I let you go, Titans head coach Brian Callahan talked about how his father, Bill, ended up being on his staff with the Titans and leaving the Browns and ending up in Tennessee with his son.
I went back for a second interview with Indianapolis, and I they asked, what about your dad? And him and I had already talked, and he said, look, I'm really happy here. I love working for Kevin Stefanski. I love working in Cleveland. He said he's really happy with the linemen that he was working with. He just really enjoyed it there. And he didn't feel like, he kind of wanted me to do it on my own, like I sort of have my whole career. I've never worked with him before. And when the cycle came around this year again, we sort of had the same conversation, like, has anything changed? And he's like, nope, not really. I think we've talked this out. We're on the same page. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. I think that's probably for the best. And I had my press conference, and I think him watching the press conference live, I think he sort of felt this, he didn't come to it for the reason that he didn't want people to think that he was coming with me. He wanted that to be my moment with my family, and him and my mom did not come down for it. But he watched it on TV and said, I think that it must have moved him. He felt compelled, like, you know what? I think I really do want to go try to help my son get his first program off the ground. And went to Kevin and talked to, Andrew Berry, and they kind of worked it out. And it was, it wasn't a done deal. It wasn't a for sure thing, but I think he finally went to him and just appealed to them and said, I think this is something that I wanted to do. I didn't think I wanted to do it, but, I'm very thankful that Andrew and Kevin and the Browns organization did let him come, because they certainly didn't have to. He was under contract, and they didn't have to let him go. And I'm super appreciative that that's the way it worked for us, because it's been an incredible experience for me.
Casey, the one thing is, I'm listening to that, I'm like, again, it's kind of the way that front office operates and has operated, and it's why people want to come back. It's why Zadarius Smith could have gone other places and came back. It's why some of the think about that. How long has it been since people want to be in Cleveland? It's been a while for the Browns.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time coming. And like with that situation, we talked about it when it was going down. It was just being speculated. Like, you couldn't be mad at the situation. Like, they did the right thing by Callahan. They didn't have to. They went ahead and let him go coach with his son. It was just the right thing to do, And business-wise, no, they didn't have to do it. They could have held on to him. You're under contract, and that's just the way that it is. But like, this is a great opportunity for Brian and Bill. And as much as it pains me to see Callahan go, I'm glad that he's going to go get to coach with his son.
Yeah, football is a people business, and this front office and the coaching staff, the head coach, kind of get that. Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, Dawg Pound Daily. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Nate Burleson gives his thoughts on the Browns and what they look like for 2024. This is courtesy of the Dogs, a Cleveland Browns podcast.
No doubt. You got the right coach. Kevin Stefanski is a tremendous coach. Last year was just one of those years, man. The injury bug hit the squad early, and from there it just seems like the team was trying to stay afloat, just doggy paddling in the deep end. Deshaun Watson, I'm a huge fan of his. Obviously, he had those couple of years at the end of his Houston, Texas run where he was just like a one-man show. And he hasn't really recaptured that magic. As much as I could praise Deshaun Watson, I can also say he hasn't played his best football as a Cleveland Brown.
For sure.
And that's just me keeping it real.
Yep.
But I know that he's going to recapture that. That's the great thing about Cleveland. Think about the success that the squad has had over the last couple of years, and you haven't even seen Deshaun play his best football.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, that's what you can get excited about. And I guarantee, listen, let's just call it what it is. A lot of the off-the-field stuff has quieted. Health is better. The mental health is better. Now you're getting a healthy, locked in, focused Deshaun Watson along with other players that are heavily motivated for multiple reasons. Some are vets that want to make the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Others are young guys that want to get a big contract. And that's the perfect storm when you're trying to build a team that's motivated to get into the postseason. I think they have to, along with Deshaun's athletic ability, Kevin Stefanski got to get back to what he knows and lead the league in play action. The game needs to be played from the inside out. I love Coop, but it makes it easier when you can dominate the interior of the defense and then have him running post digs out, because he's one of the best route runners in all of football. So, and then defense, do what they have been doing. Just get nasty, be more aggressive than not at times. I think there's a lot to smile about. The only thing with all of that optimism and glass half full on the Cleveland Browns, that division is hell, man.
Yeah. You don't got to tell us.
So, I can sit here and praise the Browns until the sun goes down, but they are going up against some juggernauts. Could be the best division in all of football.
With that, let's welcome in Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Max, AFC North, I don't think there's any question that's the best division in football.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I would probably agree with that, right? I mean, you got 4 teams that realistically could be fighting for a playoff spot next year. And obviously the Bengals coming back with Joe Burrow should be right in the thick of it. The Baltimore Ravens were the best team in the AFC last year and lost in the AFC title game. Obviously Cleveland made the playoffs last year. Pittsburgh made the playoffs last year. It really might be the best division of football right now because, like I said, all 4 teams are at least above average, in the NFL right now, and all 4 could be fighting for a playoff spot next year.
So nationally, is there a bigger question mark or a bigger variance to what the people that think Deshaun Watson can still play and the guys that think that he can't? Is he the biggest question mark in the NFL, do you think?
Yeah, he's certainly up there for the biggest question mark, right? I think Nate put it really well, where he was obviously fantastic in Houston, and then obviously a lot of the off-field stuff started springing up. He didn't play football for a couple of years, gets traded to the Browns, and looks like a shell of himself, honestly, over the last couple of years. Now, he has battled injuries in that stretch, too, but even when he's on the field, he's frankly looked pretty bad, honestly. So he needs to have a massive, massive year this year because there's a really good roster around him, and this roster is built to win. It's just whether or not Deshaun Watson can make good on the massive contract that Browns gave him and also the huge trade that they had to give up in order to get him to. Now it's time for him to make good on that deal that he was given. So, it's one of the biggest questions in the NFL is whether or not Deshaun Watson can actually be the guy that we saw in Houston a few years ago, or, like I said, is he a shell of himself after everything that happened off the field?
So I know you do a lot with college football. Given the fact the Browns didn't have a first-round pick, what do you make of their draft class, and who are some of the guys that you think highly of that they got?
Yeah, I thought it was a solid draft, honestly. I didn't really think they hit it out of the park or anything like that. Obviously, like I said, they didn't have a first-round pick, so it was hard to get blue-chip players without a first-round pick and without a top 50 pick, honestly. So I think they did an okay job, honestly. I don't think it was a great draft by any means, but I do like Michael Hall Jr. I think he's going to help out in that D tackle room, and they need help in that run defense. It's really the only real weakness of that defense last year was the run defense could have gotten a lot better. I like Jamari Thrash a lot, too. I think he'll be a pretty good backup receiver for them. They love route runners in that room, obviously. Getting Amari Cooper, getting Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. Jamari Thrash is kind of in that mold as well as a great route runner out of Louisville, so I like him. And Zach Zinter is a guy who's been a long-time starter for Michigan, obviously coming off of an injury, but he could still be potentially down the line a starting guard for the Browns as well. So overall, it was an okay draft for Cleveland. I wouldn't say it was great or bad. But yeah, like I said, this is already a good enough roster to win now. It's not like they needed a great draft to help catapult them into playoff status next year.
So Kevin Stefanski met with the media today. He talked just about all the talent that the Browns have on their defensive line.
I do feel good. Jacques and Jordan Thomas do an outstanding job with that group. It's a deep group, like you mentioned. It's a competitive group. I like how those guys practice, how they work. If your roster is built where you have strength like that at a position and it's competitive to make the football team, that's a good thing.
So, Max, how good is that defensive line when you look at it? I mean, a couple of years ago, the defensive tackle rooms, it was bad. And now that might be a strength of the team.
Yeah, obviously the defensive line, I think, is certainly one of the strengths of this team. It starts with one of the better edge duos that we have in the NFL with Myles Garrett, the reigning defensive player of the year. Zadarius Smith opposite of him, so that's a really good edge duo. And then, yeah, they got Shelby Harris, Dalvin Tomlinson. I mentioned before, Michael Hall Jr. It's getting a lot better, that D-tackle room. And I still think there's still work to be done at that D-tackle position. I don't think it's all the way there yet. But it's certainly better, like you said, than what it was just, say, last year or even a couple of years ago, too. So, yeah, I think that defensive line is really good. And like I said, the biggest reason for that is because of one of the best edge duos in the league, if not led by the best edge in the league in Myles Garrett.
So it's year 2 in defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz's system. Is it can you expect a step forward, or is that offset because of the schedule and the quarterback? I mean, they face some of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, obviously Jim Schwartz, one of the best assistant coaches that we have in the NFL. He won Assistant Coach of the Year for what he did as defensive coordinator for the Browns. They had one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. So yeah, I'm excited to see year 2 of that, and see how he does with all the talent they have on that defense and adding talent, like I said before, like Michael Hall Jr., getting him in that room as well. So yeah, I think you can expect again for the Browns to have one of the best defenses in the NFL. A lot of the reasons is because of the talent they have on that defense, but also because of the talent they have on the sidelines too, and Jim Schwartz.
Max Chadwick from PFF and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear somebody that played for Ken Dorsey and what he expects to see from Ken Dorsey's offense with the Browns. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. So Ted Ginn Jr. from Glenville High School here in town played in an offense that Dorsey ran in Carolina with the Panthers. Ginn talked about what Dorsey will bring to the Cleveland Browns offense. This from the Dogs, a Cleveland Browns podcast.
One thing about Ken Dorsey that I can say is he's going to harp on what he knows work.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And put a system around his players that he has in the building. If you go look at the 2015 team at Carolina would give you an idea of who Ken is.
Mm-hmm.
When you go and you take certain superstars that they felt were superstars away, and you use the guys that you just have. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We went to Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And we didn't throw nothing but outs. So I think with Ken and the type of guys that you have a solid run game with Chubb.
Oh, yeah.
So you bring another guy in, if you go look and see what he created in the run game in 2015, and then you have got Coop and Jerry Jeudy, so you got your slow and fast.
Yeah.
If you really want to say it like that, you know what I'm saying? Not taking away from nobody.
No, but they're good at what they do.
They're good at what they do. I stop real good, and I bypass you real good.
Yeah.
The tight end is there.
Yeah, and Joku.
He that's Greg Olsen.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So I just see that as much as you think that I'm saying basic, it's really like the shit.
He maximizes his guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, Max, it's kind of interesting. It really appears like the Browns are making a concerted effort to play to Deshaun Watson's strengths. And I'm not saying they didn't do that in the past, but I think they kind of took it a couple levels deeper this season with Dorsey and the other additions they made to the offensive coaching staff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's the go about it, right? We just talked about it before. I mean, one of the biggest storylines in the NFL, one of the biggest question marks in the NFL is whether or not Deshaun Watson can be the Cleveland Browns franchise quarterback. And if not, then you have a massive sunk cost in Cleveland, where not only money, but draft picks were a ton of draft picks were traded in order to get Deshaun Watson as well. They really mortgaged their future in order to make sure that they get a franchise quarterback. So you got to make good on that if you're Deshaun Watson, and Cleveland's got to make good on providing an environment for him to succeed. And I think getting Ken Dorsey in there as offensive coordinator is a good step forward in terms of doing that. Trading for Jerry Jeudy is another good step in order to do that as well. So yeah, I think, providing the right environment for Deshaun Watson to succeed. And, if he fails, let it be because of his fault. Don't let it be because of your fault. That's the way you got to go about it. That's the way every team's got to go about it, honestly, is provide the best environment possible for your quarterback and see what happens from there. And if he succeeds, obviously you might have a franchise guy. If not, then you know that you have to move on and find another one. So, I think Cleveland's doing a pretty good job of providing that environment for Watson to really show whether or not he can do it. And I think that'll be a really good kind of experiment to see this year.
Do you get the whole idea, with the parallels that he was drawing with the Panthers? The other thing is Ken Dorsey has experience with guys. Josh Allen's a little bit more mobile. Kevin Stefanski is more of a pocket passer kind of guy.
Yeah, I think that was definitely an interesting comparison that Ted was making to the Carolina Panthers. Now, of course, he's talking about what he knows because obviously he's in there in Carolina, so it makes sense that he's trying to draw comparisons to it. But yeah, I think Deshaun Watson can kind of fit that mold. He's not obviously as elite of a runner as Cam Newton was, or even Josh Allen, say. But he's certainly a guy that you have to account for with his mobility. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting way to look at it, is try to draw parallels to past offenses that Ken Dorsey's had. But I do think obviously Kevin Stefanski is going to have a huge role in this offense with alongside Ken Dorsey. I don't just think it'll be Ken Dorsey by himself. I think Stefanski's obviously going to have a huge role in helping that offense, take the next step next year.
So when you look at some of the guys that they've added, Jerry Jeudy, Foreman, Hines, how do they fit into that? And just kind of your thoughts of those additions.
Yeah, I think it was a good job by Cleveland, right? I think they needed to get other options behind Amari Cooper. I think that was one of the biggest weaknesses of this team last year, is that they really didn't have secondary or tertiary weapons in order to succeed. And you need more than just one receiver nowadays in the NFL. You need 2, 3, if not 4. So I think they did a good job of getting Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, got Elijah Moore as well there. You got 3 really good route runners. You drafted Jamari Thrash, like I mentioned before. You got some size in there as well, and Cedric Tillman. You got David Njoku, a tight end, and then, like I said, they added some running back help too with Nick Chubb. Coming off a devastating injury. Who knows what it'll look like after that injury, and who knows when he'll be back from that injury. So you got guys like Nyheim Hines, Deontay Foreman, Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, obviously still there as well. I think adding a ton of running backs was a smart move by Cleveland, just because you don't know what Chubb is going to look like when he comes back from that injury, and you don't even know when he'll come back from that injury because of how gruesome it was.
Foreman, what kind of back do you view him as? I've seen the stat where when he gets like at least 15 carries, he usually hits 80 yards. I mean, that's a productive back in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's been one of the more underrated backs that we've had in the league. I think he's a bruising running back. I think that's probably the way to describe him. I mean, even looking back at his days in college, he was kind of the same way. He's one of the best running backs in the country in college, and he's translated over to the NFL. And he hasn't been a superstar like he was in college, but he's still a very, very productive back. And I think, he'd certainly, alongside Nyheim Hines and Jerome Ford, while Nick Chubb is nursing that injury and coming back, he'll certainly factor pretty heavily into that backfield as probably a short yardage back, goal line back, and even maybe a little bit more too. I think he has been an efficient back, like you said before. So, I like Deontay Foreman as certainly a complimentary back in today's NFL.
Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus and I can step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the wide receiver market. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. So Browns aren't the only team in the AFC North that has some wide receiver question marks. Take a look at this. Jamar Chase, who skipped OTAs, was present for mandatory minicamp today, but not really active in it. T. Higgins, not present. Higgins has yet signed his franchise tag and is upset that they have not begun to discuss a long-term contract with him. So a couple of guys looking to get paid in a wide receiver market, which we'll talk about the wide receiver market and how it's blown up. But, man, that's trouble for the Bengals.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this, right? They just paid Joe Burrow. He's making over $55 million a year. I believe he's the highest paid quarterback currently in the NFL. And this receiver market, like you said, it's exploding with five guys now making, four. It is over $30 million a year for those four guys, and Jamar Chase will probably make it $5 when he finally signs the contract, and CeeDee Lamb, when he signs his, will probably make it $6. It's the second most valuable position in the NFL now, and I think teams are finally starting to realize that. And it's going to be interesting to see how Cincinnati handles those two and their contract situations, because I think Jamar Chase obviously will be the guy that they are willing to pay over T. Higgins. But T. Higgins is one of the better number 2 receivers that we have in this league, and Cincinnati probably doesn't want to let him just walk. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can try to handle a long-term deal with him and whether or not they can afford a long-term deal with him and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and plus any other guys they want to sign long-term too. It seems like we're heading to a situation where T. Higgins might be the odd man out, and he might be out of Cincinnati maybe as soon as next season. But I do think we're going to see at least Jamar Chase get a big contract from Cincinnati pretty soon.
So, it's kind of interesting. QB Unplugged, Quincy Avery and Deshaun Watson talked about the wide receiver market kind of blowing up.
CD, you know what I'm saying? CD's going to get his deal done. It's going to be tough, though, because the Cincinnati Bengals owner cheap than a bitch. Like, he out here, man, he penny pinching on a new level.
And you got to pay Henderson. Henderson want to get paid.
Henderson said, just trade me. He said, just trade me, man. Y'all ain't about to give me my money. Go ahead, just trade your boy. They got to worry about Henderson. They got to figure out T. Higgins, because we know T's agent. You know how they get down.
You know that.
David out here like death row. He out here like death row. You know how they get down, because he gonna try and get his whole bag. You know what I'm saying?
Got to.
So Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins is kind of the situation I want to see. because T. Higgins might not be the number one there, but T. Higgins is to me, he's a number one receiver. Like watching him play, the things he does, if Cincinnati ain't going to give him the bag, somebody will. And you can't franchise him 2 times.
So, Max, T. Higgins has the same agent as Deshaun Watson. That's why they were saying that they know they're trying to get him paid like a number one. That's a franchise that historically does not pay well. And now you've got Chase, Higgins, Hendrickson rather, among others, in addition to Burrows. I mean, and you know, they bring up Brandon Ayuk. Apparently, the initial contract offer for Ayuk, reports were today, $26.5 million, which doesn't get near. That's middle of the road for, you know, I don't think that's even in top 10 at this point.
Yeah, it's very close to being in the top 10. I think it might be just inside the top 10, but yeah, you're right. I mean, these are elite receivers that are looking to reset the market, every single one of them. I don't know if anyone's going to touch $35 million a year from Justin Jefferson. We'll see what CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase can do. But yeah, it's an exploding market right now. And like I said before, I mean, it is the second most valuable position in the NFL behind quarterback. And they're getting paid like it now. You know, now the highest paid non-quarterbacks are starting to be wide receivers. So it's going to be, like I said, Cincinnati's in a very, very tricky spot right now because you have 2 guys, and I agree with them, that might be number 1 receivers in the NFL. Jamar Chase for sure. T. Higgins is certainly up there as a top 25-ish receiver in the NFL too. 2 guys that you would love to have, but you got to pay both of them now. And you already paid your quarterback. You got Trey Hendrickson got a deal as well. It's going to be interesting to see another. Again, Jamar Chase will be Cincinnati Bengal. He's not going to leave there. But T. Higgins is the really interesting one, and we'll see whether or not they're willing to pay, you know, maybe $30 million a year for T. Higgins. I don't think they will be, and they're probably going to let him walk in free agency. And I'm sure someone else will be willing to pay $25+ million a year for T. Higgins, and he might go somewhere else after this upcoming season. So this might be the last year we see T. Higgins in a Bengals uniform, in my opinion.
All right, so we've alluded to this. Here are the top 7 wide receivers relative to average salary per season. So average annual value. Jefferson, 35. A.J. Brown, 32. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 30. He's got $120 million over 4 years. It's $140 million over 4 years for Jefferson. Hill at $30 million. Waddle is next, 28.25. Adams, $28 million. Kupp, 26.5. Then it's Devontae Smith at $25 million. Nico Collins, 24.25. DK Metcalf, 24. And if you go down to 20, you come in Amari Cooper with an average annual value of $20 million, and Chris Godwin. So Cooper made news here by not showing up for mandatory minicamp. The assumption is he wants a new contract going into the final year of his contract. He's 30. When you look at that, does that factor into it, or do his guys still come back and say, look, he's a number 1. He should be paid, X amount of million?
Yeah, I think that factors in a little bit. Obviously, age is always going to be a factor for any contract negotiation for any player. But I still think he deserves to get paid, right? And I think he's making, like I said, $20 million a year right now. I think his probably next contract negotiation, he and his agent are probably looking for at least $25 million a year, which is around the range that say Devontae Smith is getting right now. Maybe you get a little bit less than that because I know Nico Collins agreed for a contract a little bit less than that. I don't think we're talking about $30 million a year or more for Amari Cooper. I think this is more of a 25 maximum a year for him, if not a little bit less. But yeah, I still think this is a $20+ million a year receiver, and I think he's proven that over the last few years for Cleveland. And if he's going to hope for another big year this year, and we'll see if Cleveland gets a deal done before this year. But if not, I mean, in the contract year, he could certainly go off again. So yeah, I think around 20 to 25 million a year is probably what you can expect for Amari Cooper in his next contract.
Yeah, and again, the sticking point might be years. The Browns might want 2, Cooper might want 3. Like you mentioned, he's been productive. And that's, if I'm his agent, I'm arguing, look, we're still number 1 receiver. Look at the production.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, as long as he's producing, I mean, he's a guy that is such a savant route runner. I mean, this isn't like a wide receiver relying exclusively on athleticism. He is one of the best route runners in this league. And, you look at that and his game is going to age probably pretty well, right? I know his quickness will go away as he gets older and stuff like that, but he's such a great technician that he's probably going to have his game, like I said, age really well. So you could, if you're Amari Cooper and his agent, you could say that and be like, listen, I know I'm 30 years old, but I could give you another 3 or 4 good years, so give me a long-term deal. Cleveland might not be willing to do that. They might not want to shell out for a 4-year deal for a 30-year-old receiver. But he might be able to get a 2 or 3 year deal out of Cleveland. And like I said, probably making 20 to 25 million a year on that new deal. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what Amari Cooper can get with the Browns, if not another team, if they're not willing to pay up.
Max Chadwick, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Max.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Max Chadwick, make sure you check him out. Pro Football Focus, always really good stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.